Hello, everybody, and welcome to Tariq Time, where we talk about the history of Tigray. Now available on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and YouTube. On this episode, we will be talking about Hatse Yohannes and Ras Alula. Okay, hello. We're just going to wait a bit, see if we can get some people here. Okay. Let's share this to some people. Okay. Hello, everybody. Gonna see if I can add someone. Just give us a moment, everybody. We're waiting for some people to show up. We're talking about Hatse Yohannes and Ras Alula. Hello. Do I get a co-host today? I'm hoping Fabu joins, or maybe Showit will show up again, or maybe even possibly someone else who shall remain nameless. Just gonna wait a few more minutes. Let's see. Hello, Tagaro Link Up. Hello, everybody. Just give us a minute. We're waiting for some people to come join us for this episode. Hello, Hagi. Just give us a moment. One second. Not the most exciting TV, but we'll get there. Hello, everybody joining. Hi. Okay, you know what? We're going to get started, and maybe some people can join us later. So today we're going to be talking about two very important people in the history of Tigray. We're going to be talking about Hatse Yohannes, Emperor Johannes, and Ras Alula. Very, very important. So the early life of Johannes, not a lot is known specifically. We do know that he was raised in Tembien. He was born in Tembien. No co-host from us today. Oh, okay, Shawit. All right, I'm on my own. Solo episode, the first solo episode. Yeah, so we do know that he was from Tembien, and his father and grandfather were the Shum Tembien, so the rulers of Tembien. And his mother was from, I think she was part Ndarta, part Agame. And he also had some connections to other parts of Tigray and Ethiopia. So, okay, I don't know how to do this stuff. Febu's strategy. Oh, hello. Look who it is.
Hi. Hey, can you hear me?
I can hear you. Yes.
Okay, sorry. So sorry about that. I was not anyhow. I'm here. Hi.
Hi. Thank you. No, it's. I was gonna do it all on my own, but I have a co-host. That's wonderful.
Yeah, I'm here. So
Hmm
what are we talking about today?
We are talking about Emperor Johannes and Ras Alula. So that's
Okay.
going to be fun. Two very important people in the history of Tigray.
Okay.
Okay. So, as I was saying, so Emperor Johannes was part Tembian, part Agame, part Nderta. So that gave him the ability to, um, how should I say it, relate to all the different noble houses of Tigray, if that makes sense. So that's how he was able to unite Tigray. So what we see is he sort of at the time that Emperor Theodorus was ruling. Do you know who Emperor Theodorus is?
Yeah, a little bit, but go into the details.
So Emperor Theodorus was
Danny, by the way,
before.
I'm not
Mhm.
ready to be quizzed at all.
No, yeah, no. I'm operating under the assumption that you don't know. You're like
I
a
do.
proxy for the audience. That's what
Okay.
you are. So you don't have to know anything. Don't worry. Okay.
I'm just here to
Um,
be the student on camera.
Ishi. There you go. You're doing a good job. So Emperor Theodorus, while Johannes was younger, while he was rising to power, Theodorus was the person in charge,
Okay.
right? So we see that's around the time where Johannes starts to gain power in Tigray, and he starts rebelling against different people, consolidating power, right? So I'm just looking at my notes here on occasion. Um, and one of the reasons that people give that he rebelled, and we don't know this for sure, but this is what people say, is that he was the youngest of all of his siblings. And each of his siblings, and him as well, were given titles. Like, let's see, what were they given? His brother Guksa was given the title of Dejazmach, which is a pretty high title, right?
Mm-hmm.
The brother in between was given Fatawarari. I don't know how to pronounce that word properly. I wish Uncle was here to correct me. And then he was given the lowest title of Balambras. And so people speculate that he was um, unhappy with with being given such a low title, and so that's why he rebelled.
But he was the younger sibling.
He was the youngest, so that's why he was given that title.
Okay. Makes sense.
Um, yeah. So in his real name, do you know his real name? What Johannes's real name was?
No, what is it?
Kasa, I believe. Or Kasai? I don't remember. I've only seen it written. I haven't heard anyone say it. Lich
Okay.
Kasa, Kasa Mircha, right? Because when you become emperor, they take a regnal name, if that makes sense.
Okay.
Okay, so Theodorus was also a very, very brutal emperor.
Mm-hmm.
Many people were unhappy with his rule in Ethiopia. So he gained control over most of what is now Tigray, parts of what is now Eritrea, and even parts of what is now Amhara. So there's a whole bunch of stuff we're not going to get into going on with Theodorus at the time, where he had jailed a bunch of, I think almost every single foreigner from Europe. He had jailed them and put them on, I don't know what you would call it, a mountaintop prison. They really like mountaintop prisons in Ethiopia. Oh no, we lost Fabu. It's okay. She'll be back.
I'm here.
So
I'm here. I'm so
you're
sorry.
here. You're here.
Can you
It's
hear me?
okay. Yeah. So the English sent an expedition led by Robert Napier to essentially go deal with Theodros. And it was such. It was, I think, about 18,000 men, weapons and such. And at this point in time, when Johannes become the ruler of Tigray, they had to ask for his permission to come into Ethiopia. So basically, he said, I'll give you permission as long as you leave right when you're done. And, you know, obviously from his point of view, it's getting rid of a rival, right? And allowing him to consolidate the man himself is here. I'm going to interrupt myself and try and invite the fabled uncle. There you go. So that allows him to consolidate power, as I was saying. I'm so sorry. And let me just, possibly do, whoa, look who it is. Oh, we got all three. Wow, whoa, 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 whoa. Dahando.
Sorry.
It's all good. You're here. If you're here, you're here. Okay. So I'm just going to fill you in, Uncle, on what we're talking about. We're talking about Emperor Johannes and Ras Alula, two very important people in our history. Guys, we're going to get back to what I was talking about, but Uncle's here, so I want to ask him some questions and bring him up to speed. So first question before we get to anything else, is it Hatse or Hatse?
Hatse.
Hatse, Tigrinya.
Yeah. Tigrinya
okay. And Giz?
Yeah, Tigrinya and Giz.
So okay.
The word, if you ever heard of the word, like, for somebody to get engaged, what word would we use?
I don't know, Febu.
Hatse? Oh, Hatse. Okay. So
Hatse could either mean a fiance or a protectorate. Or somebody
who
is the person who protects the country, or the highest emperor, I guess, right?
Okay, so that's the origin of the word. That's exactly where it comes from.
Yeah.
Okay, so then is it Ras or Re'esi?
Ra'asi.
Ra'asi.
For the position in Tigrinya, it's Ra'asi.
Ra'asi. Okay. Alrighty. Febu, can you do me a quick favor? Can you write like the title and then I'll pin it in the comments?
I just did it.
Done?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay.
I saw the comment.
Give me one second. I'm going to try and, yeah, that's exactly it. I'm still kind of, I keep accidentally doing things on Instagram. Okay. Comment is pinned. Okay, let me go look at my notes. I had some other questions. We're going to dial it back to what I was talking about earlier. Can you tell us anything about the early life of Johannes, Uncle?
Yeah, so Hatse Yohannes' initial title or his horse name was Abba Kasi or Kasa Bezbez. Kasa Bezbez. Initially,
let me interrupt you just right quick. What's a horse name?
So any of the fighters or the generals, such as a Dejazmach or Kenyazmach, would have a name, a fighting name. So when they're in the battle. So, for example, Rasi Alula had the name Abba Nega, meaning, or Abba Itzah. And then Rasi, when he was Dajjat Kasa, when he was a Dajjat, he had the name Abba Kasi. Kasi meaning snake or serpent. So he was as sharp as a serpent. That was
okay. Mm-hmm.
Very powerful ruler. But in the early stages, I believe he had a very small role. His brother actually had the position of Dejazmach, and I think he was given Balambaras, the title of Balambaras, from Atse Tedros. So he felt kind of he felt a certain way about that. So it kind of remained with him. Or at least towards his feelings towards Tedros.
That's basically exactly what I was saying. So could it be said that was part of the reason why he started to rebel at that time?
At least an early, an initial reason for sure. An initial reason for sure.
Okay. And when he was, at that point in time, it was Tewodros who was the emperor, right?
Yes, exactly.
Okay. So, and I was saying he reached a certain point where he had essentially gotten control of most of what is modern-day Tigray, parts of modern-day Amhara, and parts of Eritrea, yeah?
Exactly, yeah.
Okay. And then we see the British expedition led by Robert Napier coming in. Mm-hmm. And do you want to explain to us why that's where we just, that's where you came in, why this British expedition was coming in to deal with Theodorus.
So initially with Tedros, if you see a little early in his life, he was quite the I don't want to use the word dictator, but he was extremely violent, killing people at the stake for simply even thinking a certain way. So he was quite aggressive, but nevertheless, he was the godfather of the modern Ethiopian state at that time, as he joined a lot of kingdoms that were not necessarily together due to Zaman Misafint. That being said, I believe there was a situation where he jailed a certain British national. I don't know what his position was. And he said something along the lines of, build me a gun or make me a gun. The guy doesn't know how to build a gun, make a gun. So he was arrested and put into jail. Now, this was looked at as an act of aggression towards the Brits, I guess because he had some kind of position, maybe an ambassador of sorts.
Can you guys hear my background?
Bun
Yeah.
Yeah, what?
Never,
I mute.
you know, we got to do that.
Yeah. Or when they bring it to you and you do the. Okay, continue, Uncle.
But yeah, so that being said, that caused the British to want to come to Ethiopia. Now we have characters like Menelik, Wagshum Goezi, who are proactively writing letters to the British to kind of help and create a situation. But in order to get to Tedros, you would have to go through Eritrea and Tigray. So ultimately speaking, Wagshum Goezi was kind of scared to meet the British. He would make excuses to not really go and actually see them. But I guess, nevertheless, I mean, they got to Johannes, and I guess they seen that this would be the more practical situation. So, yeah, they went through Eritrea and Tigray.
Okay.
Wait, so guys, he asked this British guy to make him a gun, a guy who has no idea how to do this. He obviously didn't do it. He got mad, and he killed him, or he jailed him.
He jailed him.
Okay, then the Brits took that as like a sign of hostility or something, and then that's when they came.
Yeah.
Okay.
But I think the issue was under Tedros, he was asking for carpenters and skilled men, and they were just simply sending pastors or priests. And he was actually saying, I have more than enough priests in my country. I don't need this. I need the skilled workers. And then I guess he was speaking to this ambassador of sorts. I don't remember the name, but I guess at the end of it, he just jailed him under those pretexts.
Yeah, I can actually expand on this a little bit. I think it was something also like he specifically, like you said, he wanted guns or a huge cannon. In Ethiopia, for some reason, they call it Sevastopol, which is a city in Russia. I don't know why. I think it's a specific kind of cannon at the time. But he sent a letter with to a specific dignitary to take it to the Queen of England at the time. And he said, you take it personally to the Queen of England. What the guy did was he went and he gave it to the, I think, Viceroy of Egypt, who was an Englishman. And he took the letter and he filed it under pending. Then it was determined that because Ethiopia was in the sphere of like the Indian Ocean, it should have been sent to the Raj of India. So it was sent to the Raj of India, and because British people are hilariously petty, he filed it under not even pending. Like, just so
wow.
It took like 3 years for him to get a response, and we know also, like as you said, at this point in time, he was going a little bit cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs. So he gets mad, and I think he actually jailed almost every single European he could find.
Wow.
On top of, I think it's like a mountaintop prison. I don't remember which one. I think it's Magdala, or I don't know how you pronounce it.
Yeah, Magdala.
And then Robert Napier shows up with his expedition, 18,000 men. Everyone deserts Theodorus at that point in time. He has a few hundred men. They lose the battle, obviously, and he commits suicide. Then they loot the church. Um, and then
Wait, who's they? Sorry, who's they?
the
Oh,
British
okay,
looted
okay.
the church. A lot of that stuff is still around in museums in the UK and such. Um, then we get someone people forget, but he was, I think, emperor for like 3 years.
Mhm.
I think Tekle Georgis, right?
Yes.
So, what was the relationship between Johannes and Tekle Georgis, and how did
Mhm.
Johannes ascend to power? It's probably very brief, but
Yeah, very brief. So, Tekle Georgis, who was originally Wagshum Goeze, he was actually the in-law, I believe it's called in-laws, right? In-law to Johannes.
mhm.
Johannes was his wife. Dinkinesh, I believe her name was. And, he first, was willing to even go as far as, be giving him titles. So I think as Johannes received the title of Ra'asa Makwanant, if I'm not mistaken, from Wagshum Goze. And he started immediately using it right away. But he challenged him. And after, I guess, the 3 years, they did go to war. And there was a funny little narrative, too. If you know, it's Wagshum Goze or Nugus Nagasta Tekle Georgis sends a bag of taf. So he sends a bag of taf and he says, I'll, disperses it and says, I'll disperse your army, like, or something of the sort. And then at Johannes, he burns it and sends it back and says, I'll cook you guys
Whoa!
your army in the same manner.
Oh,
And
wow.
they go through this back and forth to the point where he loses, Wagshum Goze or Nugusanagas, the Tekle Georgis, loses an eye in this battle in Tigray. And then he gets arrested and banished to, I think, initially in Dabagarima and then finally in Dabasalama in Tambien.
Okay. Okay. So, and then he becomes emperor and he gives himself the name of Johannes.
Yes, yes. So he,
Okay.
and mind you, this is the first emperor since as if Asil to be crowned in Aksum.
Okay. And that's like 1600-ish,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Okay.
This is almost.
So, what was his internal policy like in Ethiopia? Could you tell us about that?
So it's something similar to what we had recently, which is basically traditional rulers and leaders will be able to lead their own regions, but they would give tribute and they would recognize Johannes as being the Nugusa Nagas or the emperor or king of kings. So Menelik was given back Shoa, so he was reinstated as the king of Shoa, as that was his lineage. I believe there was initially Nugus Tekla Haymanot, and then was he replaced by Adal Ras Adal? There was somebody, but they were replaced for their rebellion. And you had Ras Adal Tasamma, who became the emperor of Gojam. Gondar, Tigray, and Eritrea would be under Hatse Yohannes, ultimately with Eritrea being under Ra'asi Alula. Ras Mikael was the leader in at the time Ras Muhammad Ali was the leader of Wallo, and little situations will happen later. Yeah, but
So, yeah, and to expand on what you said, he appointed them as kings and then allowed them to rule their own regions independently as long as they swore fealty to him, which was very unusual at the time, right? Like, that's not normal. So he said, hey, you can rule your own region as long as you understand that I'm the supreme power.
Mm-hmm.
He kept, I think, Amharic as the official language of the court, right?
Yeah.
And
but
then, sorry, what were you?
Key thing is he kept it Amharic. He didn't instate it as Amharic.
Yeah, he kept it. Yeah.
That's a good point.
And he, I think, some people describe him as the first federalist of Ethiopia. So, that's pretty interesting. And some people also say this is a point that he, empowering his subordinates may have also led to his own downfall. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I mean, it can be looked at as being true, right? We still have remnants or sentiments of the Zaman Masafint under Tedros and Johannes, meaning local warlords or these kings still vied for power. So Menelik was proactively working with other foreign powers. Ras Muhammad Ali, same thing. And even Nugus Taklai Maulid II, I believe is his name, if I'm not mistaken. same thing. They were proactively working against the emperor to kind of move him out of the way. It's only after going to war and losing do they somewhat temporarily submit. I believe there's a proverb in Amharic. I don't remember exactly how it goes. I'll check for it and I'll bring it up later.
Nishi. If anyone also, just by the way, before we move on, if anyone has any questions, please put them in the question box and we'll get to them later. Okay. So now what we'll do is I have a question for Uncle, but we'll wait. We'll switch over to the next guy and then we'll bounce back. Oh, Uncle, you've returned.
Yeah.
Are you just looking for the quote?
Yeah. But you can continue. You can continue.
Okay. Well, let me know when you're ready. Okay. So we're going to switch over to Ra'asi Alula. So Ra'asi Alula Engida. And his horse name, as you said, was Aba Nega. Or what is it? Aboy Tigri? Okay. And he was probably one of the greatest generals of remember, guys, if you got questions, you put in the question box. That's the easiest way to get them answered. He's probably one of the greatest generals in Ethiopia and in Africa. So during this whole period where Johannes ruled, he was depended upon by Johannes to fight against the many different forces that were attempting to invade or subjugate Ethiopia at the time. So we're talking about Egypt, we're talking about Italy, we're talking about the Mahdists under Sudan. I think there might be a fourth one I'm forgetting. But yeah, so that's why he's very important. Do you have the quote for us, Uncle?
Yeah, so it's in Amharic.
Mm-hmm.
My Amharic is not the greatest, but it goes something like Doro Sizu, Tere Afiso, Talat Sizu, Mahala Afriso. So the emperors would come and kind of swear their allegiance to Johannes, but Talat Sizu, so when you hold your enemy, Mahala Afriso, which basically means the promise or the swearing or the oath is destroyed or it can be nullified when you catch your enemy. So they'll play these games or snaky games and
Okay, I see.
time is right.
Here's the question I had for you. Let's bounce back to Johannes. What was Johannes's relationship with the church?
So
what was? Mm-hmm.
Okay, so it's a little iffy. I mean, Hatse Yohannes, when he was born, the churches in Qolla Tembian refused to baptize him, I guess for family ties. So he ended up, he was born in Qolla Tembian, but baptized in Dagwa Tembian, in the Bahadira monastery. So he was somewhat of a scholar. I mean, growing up, he was trained in the church. So he knew the New Testament and Old Testament, and Kenny, of course. As well as he was quite close with a lot of the clergy in his area and in Aksum. So there was some relationship there. Not extremely strong, but nevertheless it was there. Which was why he was allowed to be ordained or conferred as an emperor.
Wasn't there some sort of disagreement with different kinds of doctrines going on at the time, and he held some sort of council? Could you tell us about that?
So later on, okay, so there was no Ethiopian Orthodox Tewahedo Church at this time. There were, at bare minimum, 3 separate churches. Different dogmas, different teachings, different understandings. The church in Tigray, Eritrea, and some parts of Gondar were under the Kara Tewahedo. So Kara Tewahedo believes in the Tewahedo nature, the composite nature of Christ, fully God, fully man. The Tzagga, or the adoptionist theory, which is held by some Jehovah's Witnesses, was followed in Gondar and in Lasta. The Qawat, which is also known as Tzagga is known as Soslida, and then the Qawat the Qawat theory was something held in Showa and in Gojam. Till today. And it was Hatse Yohannes who brought these groups together to debate which theory would be correct, right? So there was Christians, Muslims, even pagans. So they debated at Boromeda, which was in Wallo, which was traditionally a Christian area, but through time kind of changed. But a lot of ancient monasteries can be found in Wallo and Lasta area. So they had this big debate, and the Alexandrian Patriarch had a letter written towards for this council, for Hatse Yohannes. And it was at this council in which Ras Muhammad Ali was as Mikael. So he became Ras Mikael at that time. And it was at this point that we get this introduction of the Ethiopian Orthodox Tewahedo Church. Because through this debate, the Kara Tewahedo faith won the debate. So this is when we get this faith called the EOTC, or Ethiopian Orthodox Church.
Okay, so quick question. Before he held that council, did the church have an official position, or were things just like haphazard and you could, like, as a priest or a specific church, just like decide what you wanted to adhere to?
No, so the church in Aksum was the principal church.
Mm-hmm.
Adwarat wa Garamat. So which would mean the head of all churches and monasteries. And the faith that was there was unchanged since the Alexandrian time, since the Aksumite period. In other areas, because of a lot of the missionaries that came from the Catholics, different positions were taught, and so slowly but surely these churches started to change. There was a reason why they would say, like, people in Tigray and Eritrea never changed their faith, and it was because of this. We were very solid in what we believed. But a lot of these other churches, due to the missionaries from the Portuguese, like the likes of Mendes and a few other people as well, Munzinger, you started to get a lot of these, these little differences.
Differences is a polite word for it.
Actually, these churches were heretical, and were not a part of the communion. Mm.
Okay. So he was reaffirming what the real position of the church was.
Exactly.
Oh, okay. Okay. So now I think we'll start talking about Ras Alula, and we'll get back to the main point, which will be the foreign policy and all the stuff that Raasi Alula and Hatse Yohannes dealt with together. So what can you tell us about the early life of Alula?
So Alula was born in a place called Menawe in Tambien. And he was born to I guess I don't want to use the word lower class family, but his parents were farmers, and he since he was a kid, he was known as being this strong guy, even as a kid playing around with youth. So growing up, he developed some kind of relationship with Hatse Yohannes, starting as a doorman or a chamberlain. I think it's called Ilf Kalkai, if I'm not mistaken, in Amharic. So he was a doorman, and slowly he rose up the ranks, starting as a basic fighter, getting all these other titles, and slowly but surely he made it to the title of Rasi or Ras. Probably the most loyal general to Hatse Yohannes, the most loyal, who fought tooth and nail simply out of his loyalty to Hatse Yohannes.
So guys, is Ras basically the translation for general?
It is a general, but at the same time, it's also like a position such as a duke or baron.
Okay.
I think, sorry, in Ethiopia, like, military titles and noble titles were kind of like a little confused and fused, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Would you say that, Uncle?
Absolutely. Especially after the Solomonic dynasty and even Zemen and Mesafint, it gets extremely mixed up. If that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And in my notes here, it says this is an oral tradition, but I don't know if this is true or not, that Alula was the one himself who captured Tekle Georgis when Johannes crushed him in battle. Is that true?
Again, it's as you mentioned, but it's what a lot of people say. What? Rasi Alula Ba'alu, he's
yeah. Okay, so now we start to see, let's focus, I think we'll start with, say, the Egyptians. What can you tell us about, a lot of people don't realize that the Egyptians invaded Ethiopia multiple times and were defeated multiple times.
Yeah.
So what can you tell us about that conflict, maybe how it started and how Alula and Johannes defended Ethiopia?
So initially, it was the Ottoman Turks that controlled the port of Massawa. So if we remember, at least as early as the 1600s, they colonized these ports, and I think it was called the Islet of Habash or Habashia, which is also how we get the word Abyssinia. But nevertheless, once the Turks left, the Egyptians came and took over the Massawa port, I believe, and it was from there that they tried to enter into present day Eritrea. So places like Bogos, which is now called Keren, Saganeti, Akaloguzai, Hamasi, and so on and so forth. And this is where Rasi Alula developed a name for himself by defeating the Egyptians on several occasions. But I mean, you can probably give it a more detailed analysis.
No, that's great. Like, Egypt was also in a really odd position at the time, where it was technically part of the Ottoman Turks, but also low-key colonized by the UK.
Exactly, yeah.
But also low-key kind of independent. It's very odd. It's really odd.
Very.
And they were looking to expand their influence in both Sudan and Ethiopia, the Horn of Africa.
Mm-hmm.
So we see them start pushing in. And I don't remember which was the first. I'm trying to look at my notes here and see which was the first battle they fought. But regardless, there was one point where they invaded from, I think, Somalia or the port of Zela. They invaded Harar.
Yeah.
So they were marching towards Harar.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't remember. I don't remember who led that battle, whether it was Johannes or Alula. I think maybe Alula. But the army was the Egyptian army with American and British officers and weaponry, really large army, and they were soundly defeated.
And just one, I just wanted to add to that, which is
go ahead.
Those specific Americans that came were Republicans. No, joke. Really? They were Republicans. I think
so
the specific names, but they were.
So we defeated our people defeated some Republicans back in the day. Okay. Let's see. And then let's see. Okay, I have it here. The first one was Gundet Gure. I never know how to pronounce this, or
Gura, which is close to the border in Akaluguzai, towards Adigrat, Zalambasa. Gura.
Okay, in 1875 and 1876. And that allowed him to sort of push them out of Eritrea and gain control over the eastern lowlands of Eritrea, because the people then had already been sort of paying tribute to both the emperor and Ra'asi Alula, maybe even some previous lords, but also maybe paying tribute to some Egyptians and Ottomans. Things were very confused at that area in time, who they were paying tribute to, who they were under the control of. It switched over time. Let's see. I'm trying to see where the next one is. There's so many battles. It's
Gura, Gundet, Loga.
Okay, Ailet, Senhit. So these are all places where he defeated the Egyptians, and eventually they just gave up and pulled out. Mm-hmm. Also, something very important was the.
Wait, guys, I have a question.
Yes, go ahead.
Was this back to back, or they retreated, they came back, they left, they came back? What was it like?
Retreated, came back, different areas, as they said. The Harar, so in the southeastern part of Ethiopia, Eritrea. The first one was 1875, and the last one, I think, was 1880. So this is over a period of 5 years where they kept trying to invade Ethiopia and eventually just gave up after they were soundly defeated multiple times. I think 4 or 5 times. So then what we see is a group of people called the Mahdists of Sudan, or as what we call them in our culture, I think we call them Dervish. Don't we call them that?
Yes, Dervish. Oh.
Dervish. Is there anything you want to tell us about the Dervish or Mahdists of Sudan?
So yeah, the Mahdists was like a religio military group that that hated the Egyptians, mind you. But they began to hate us because specifically of one specific act, which was I believe Hatse Yohannes helping the British slash Egyptians leave through Kassala, which is at the border of Eritrea and Sudan. So which is what caused the Mahdists or the dervish to come and sack Gondar. So they came to Gondar, burned all the churches, took the women as prostitutes, simply kidnapped them. Very treacherous things were going on. And, Hatse Yohannes was kind of given this ultimatum of whether he had to fight against the Italians who were coming through Massawa and took over large parts of Eritrea, or to fight the Mahdists in Gondar. And mind you, this is at a time where the rulers of Showa and Gojam were revolting against Hatse Yohannes. They were writing letters to Italy as they were to the UK, literally begging them to come. And, so Hatse Yohannes first went and attacked King, I believe Tekla Haymanot of Gojam. And after defeating him, he was about to march to Menelik. But then, of course, he heard about what happened in Gondar. And, there's some speculation on who kind of, instructed him to go one place to another. But it's more so aphataric than anything.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So basically, that's exactly. He fought multiple battles against the Mahdists of Sudan.
I was on mute. Sorry, I was saying, should we get into that, or that's too spicy? What Uncle's talking about, speculation.
No, I don't think it's just, I don't know. Uncle, go ahead. Enlighten us about the speculation. We're saying it's speculation. It may or may not be true.
So there was a spy dressed as a falasi or a bahatawi, which is basically a hermit, and he told them, there's these two fires. You'd have to choose where to go. You can fight the Italians, and you'll survive. But you can fight the Mahdists, but you will surely die and go to heaven. So that was the reason why he kind of chose to go to protect Gondar, according to this narrative. So that was the reason why he went to go protect Gondar. And the same Bahatawi, from behind Hatse Yohannes, shot him with some kind of gun. So that's the narrative, a popular narrative. But again, it's speculation. It's not so much documented history.
Yeah. And so he died at Metemma, as we said, fighting in battle. And this is also just I'll do the little, devil's advocate. Emperors or leaders who fight in battle are rare because that tends to happen. They tend to die in battle because, like Alexander and so on, it's generally rare. Most tend to sit in the back and watch or maybe give a few instructions. So next we're going to move on to the Italians. And I just want to also emphasize, this was roughly happening all at the same time. It wasn't like he fought one group of people, then he was allowed to fight another. Alula and Johannes were zipping around Ethiopia, defending it from the Italians, the Egyptians, the Sudanese, the British and the French playing games in the background. So it wasn't like a nice orderly, they got to deal with each enemy one by one. They were dealing with them basically all at the same time. So they also defeated the Italians at Sahati, Dogali, Amba'alaje, Nagale, Adwa, and a few other places. People don't realize this. Before the Battle of Adwa, there was many other battles. Is there anything you can tell us or expand upon, Uncle?
So what had happened was after the death of Hatse Yohannes, we have 3 years of internal fighting in Tigray. There's 3 major houses, right? And with Hatse Yohannes, it was kind of like a merging of all 3 because he had ancestry to all 3, which was specifically, Tembien, Enderta, and Agama. So Shum Agama Woldum, the sister of Dejaswagadis was his great grandmother. His father was of the line of Shum Tembien, and also specifically to to Suhul Mikael. And why that was important was because the wife of Suhul Mikael, I think her name was Aster Walwal, was the daughter, I believe, of Emperor Iyasu, if I'm not mistaken. Or Nagus Bekafa, one of the two. Was it? I think it's Iyasu.
Yes.
And then also on his mother's side, again, we have the likes of Dajjat Dabbab Dimsu and, Kifle Yusuf. And it goes to Ra'asimi Walid Selassie, who was important prior to Suwagaris, I believe. Now, with Hatse Yohannes dying, we see these guys all fighting each other. So you have, I think, Shum Agame Sibhat. We have Garusilase Baregaver in Arwa. We have a few other names to play. And they all denied Ras Mangasha as being the child of Johannes. Because it was known to everybody that he was the son of his brother. That being said, Ra'asi Alula, Ra'asi Yohannes, and Ra'asi Walanchiel of Hamasian were both called to Shoa. And again, this is actually where the proverb that I mentioned earlier in Amharic comes to play. Because Ras Makwanen swore on a tablet, in front of a tablet, that they would not be attacked or killed or anything. They were just simply called to Shoa. And once there, they were given an ultimatum. Otherwise, they would be instantly killed. Now, this ultimatum was that the administrator of Ra'isa Adwarat wa Garamat Aksum Mariam Tzion church, the Nawra'id, would be appointed directly from Shoa, which is one stipulation. The second stipulation, is all taxes that would go through Tigray. Mind you, everyone pays their taxes in Adwa. 100% will be sent directly to Shoa. The third one was that Tsalamti and the area of Simeon would be given directly to his wife, Tsahaitu Batur. Mind you, what's interesting about Tsahaitu or Taitu is that she's from this area. She has ancestry, of course, relating to Dajjat Wawi Haile Mariam, who was famous during the Zaman al-Masafin, the Chekka and Zanawara. And more importantly, to the house of Endarta, going further back. And not only that, I mean, there was a lot of marriages amongst Dek Ushum Agame, specifically with Wubi Haile Mariam. So it's quite interesting. But nevertheless, with that being said, this was the ultimatum given to them. So this is the transferring of power to Shoa. Now, that being said, Menelik had no problem with the Italians not only taking Eritrea, but Tigray as well. He's quoted as saying, "These are my neighbors; these are not my people." Specifically, the Treaty of Wuchale also becomes something interesting because the argument over the Battle of Adwa was that the Treaty of Wuchale was a problem. Now, the issue that we have is that he gave away Eritrea in the Treaty of Wuchale, and that was not the point of contention. The point of contention was whether Ethiopia was to be a protector under Italy or not. So, this is argued with a lot of people, but I think it would be fair to understand that, places like Saganeti, Adahalai, a few other places as well, is in the articles of the Treaty in 1889. So, they started creeping into Tigray, and it was because of Taitu, who wanted to make sure at least Aksum should be a part of the realm because the importance of that church, Ra'sa Adwarat wa Garamat. But yeah, you can probably explain.
No, that's perfect. I think we're running out of time. We'll basically end it there and move on to question and answer. Before we do that, is there anything you want to end? Any comments? Anything you want to say about Alula or Johannes and their importance?
Yeah. So a lot of those battles that you mentioned earlier, Mbalaje, Hashanga, Muqala, going all the way up to Adwa was fought by many of them, but Mangasha and Alula were key individuals. And then a specific Basha Aw Alam. Aw Alam is important because paternally is Eritrean and maternally is Tigrayan from Intachel. But nevertheless, he was a spy, and it was this spy who kind of was going back and forth between the Italians and the Ethiopians, and he gave decisive information that kind of helped in a lot of the battles. And of course, like the Battle of Adwa can be looked at as either a sign of African heroism or a sign of African betrayal and working with the colonists. It depends on which eye you look at it with, right?
Mm-hmm.
I'll leave it with that.
And I'll just end with a quote by Bayru Tafla, the chronicler of Johannes. And he has the quote where he describes Johannes that I think is great, where he says he's a nobleman by birth, a cleric by education, a zealot by faith, a moralist by tendency, a monk by practice, a nationalist by policy, and a soldier and emperor by profession.
Very.
So, yeah.
Wow.
So now we'll move on to the question and answers. We'll look at the question box. If anyone has any questions, please put them in there. Someone asks, do you have any history on the kingdom of Diamat? Yeah, if you watch our first 2 episodes, which are on here on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and YouTube, you can find us talking about the ancient history of Tigray. So yes, we have that. Someone else asks, if they were working with outside forces to overpower King Johannes, wouldn't that be a violation of their agreement to govern their, it doesn't let me read the whole thing, their provinces? I guess that's what it says.
It was to continue to govern their provinces.
Okay. If they're working with outside forces to overpower King Johannes, wouldn't that be a violation? Yeah, yeah. The basic answer is yes. We see this happening. Well, I don't know. So what I'll say is some people say that Johannes did it first by speaking to the British. I think that's a stretch and a half. I think what happened under Johannes was kind of unique, as we were talking about. He was fighting many different groups of people for quite a long time, and he asked for help, I think, isn't that correct, Uncle, from his subordinates, and he didn't receive any. Let's see.
Someone had asked, do kings need blessings from monks?
Uncle?
To become emperor, I mean, the church would have to actually ordain you. Being emperor is a position in the church. So it would definitely need it. So the difference, for example, with saying somebody's a nugus or somebody's a merahi or halafi is a nugus is actually ordained using holy oil from the church by specific administrators of certain prime monasteries. Being a merahi or a khalafi or a halafi is just simply a leader. Like to be a ra'asi, a king can give you the title. A certain, an individual can. No problem to it. But for a nagus, like I mentioned, it would need the church's thing.
Okay, someone has a nice fun fact here. The trigger on Johannes's rifle was made of gold. I saw it in his throne room. That's really cool. I didn't know that.
Yeah, I didn't know that. I actually went there too. I can't believe I didn't know this.
Febu, is there anything you want clarified? I think we're getting close to wrapping up.
No, that was great. Just let everybody know, guys, all the episodes are now available on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and YouTube. So if you've missed any of the previous episodes, just check them out.
Yeah. Any comments, Uncle, before we wrap up?
No, I would say, this was the coming back of the throne to Tigray since the...
if it's... Sorry, go on.
No matter how short-lived it was.
Okay, yeah. If they ever make a movie, they could call it The Return of the Throne. Yeah. How about that?
And one
okay. More. Go ahead.
Hatse Yohannes' rule is something similar to Tigrayan culture. It was riddled with wars, riddled with problems, and nevertheless, we struggle and we come out on top.
Exactly.
Amen.
Exactly. Okay, we'll end it there. Thank you, everybody, for joining us on this episode of Tariq Time. We will be back on May 23rd, 2 weeks from now. Have a good night.
Bye, guys.
Goodbye.
Okay.